But I also don't want to like set this precedent like that we're gonna come fill it up every day because we
Yeah.
can't do that.
I got a cute haircut.
We could look at the West
Where
Center.
is Max Liberty?
We've got to build it first. Like we're building them ourselves too. So which is fun.
No, he is
Um,
about to,
Oh.
it's about to have some construction done. It's like,
Which one were you
to the
living in?
transition school.
Okay.
With Old Laurel, my staff, and then we're gonna,
Yes.
it's a nice,
I used to
so there's
live
gonna be
at
up there, and they're gonna have 7 people.
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
They're gonna be building out some offices.
Always construction everywhere.
We're trying to be creative.
Everything's with your person.
Are you gonna have a colonoscopy as part of this coming year? Yeah, for good colon cancer.
Yeah, I get those regularly. Do you have one coming up?
No, I don't like, it's hard for me to get up and go to the toilet.
Yeah.
I didn't like.
It's a nasty process.
Do you try to turn the specimen into your doctor?
No. Do you want to go outside and talk about this in case they're going to start the meeting?
Yeah, discuss it, Nick.
Just to let you know, there is a live mic in the room.
That was very nice, I shouldn't have asked.
I don't want
We I see one person joined on the line, Robert Harvey. We are waiting for a quorum. I know Dr. Bellamy is going to be late. Is Miss Washington? Do we know if she's coming? She's usually here early.
You want me to text her?
It's not quite 6, so.
Recording in progress.
Kathleen, I've sent the link I have to Zoom around to everyone. I don't know if it's the proper one, but for the people that were asking.
Yeah, they sent Brandon that one from the city site to register.
For folks on the, for people on the phone, we are waiting for a quorum of commissioners in the room before we begin the meeting.
Let me go, I'm gonna go relieve Maria actually.
Okay.
She's at the door.
I'm glad you got the green pen, Emma. Earl. Means we're gonna make things happen today. Me and you, with no quorum. Ms. Carey, have you heard from any other commissioners?
I'm here, so he'll be 5 minutes late. Wes may be like 10 minutes late.
Wes texted.
Okay.
I know about him. Okay.
Oh, that's
And there's Michael. So, okay. So we just need one more person to get here. Welcome.
How are you?
How are you? We're just, Javier and Wes are running a little behind. And I haven't heard from Laura or Miss Washington. So. I think, though, based on our new training, Ms. Carey, that we can start, we just can't vote on anything. Laura's walking in now, though. So we'll just give her a minute. well, we'll go ahead and start. We won't vote on anything until Laura gets in here. So, call the meeting to order. Ms. Carey, do you want to do a roll call of the three of us
Sure.
right here?
Commissioner Hicks,
Here.
Commissioner Wicks,
Here.
Commissioner Payne,
Here.
All right. We'll now do Commissioner Goldblatt.
Commissioner Goldblatt.
There we go. All right, we'll now do a moment of silence. All right, so general announcements, meeting dates and reminders. We have the CRHA Board Work Session coming up on Thursday, December 12th at 6. We also have the Redevelopment Committee meeting every first Thursday of the month at, it says updated time. Do you know what the updated time is, Ms. Carey? Oh, wait, 3 o'clock on December 5th, and then at 1 o'clock on December 19th, if I would just continue reading. Sorry, everyone. And then the Safety Committee meeting is now every second Wednesday of the month at 12 p.m. So the next one will be December 11th, followed by January 8th. I'll now open it up for public comments, followed by FAR comments. Sorry, did anybody else have any updates? Are you making comments? Okay.
Hi, my name is Emily Dreyfus, and I'm here in my capacity as a senior organizer for the Legal Aid Justice Center. And a couple of things. I am concerned about the number of evictions that are happening, especially right now as the holiday season starts. I was looking at the property management report and saw there are currently 21 total vacant units, and a lot of them are not offline, a couple of them are offline, but most of them are not rent ready, which I think is because there's probably delays getting turns done, like getting the units ready for new residents. Meanwhile, there are 37 people being brought to court for unlawful detainers, and most of them are for back rent. And I have heard some stories of communication problems from residents where they have tried to call their property manager, or they don't know their property manager because there's been turnover, and are having difficulty navigating the process. So I wanted to highlight that and see if there's a way to at least slow these down until people have a chance to try to get financial assistance and try to get a payment plan if they have the right to a payment plan. A lot of people don't even seem to know about the payment plans. And then the other thing is, I wanted to just mention the city council discussion that happened, which I instigated over email because of concerns about the wording in a resolution that council was considering that Alex Akefuna put forward. And I'm not even sure if that came to you all. It wasn't something I was aware of, but it was a resolution about the management of the redevelopment LLC for West Haven. So there are two potential limited liability corporations. One to be the redeveloping corporation for West Haven, and the other to manage CRHA's participation in that, as I understand it. But the language basically said it's a management corporation, and that was very concerning to me because a management corporation sounds like property management. But I think that is going to get resolved. Mr. Sales said that the wording would be changed before it goes back to council, so that sounded great, and I just wanted to update you that that is a good resolution. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if this is allowed. Can we add at some point a discussion of evictions to the agenda?
An additional, so,
Can we amend
Like-
the agenda? Is that allowed?
yeah.
Do we need to vote on that?
I would, I think that it would be, yes, we can discuss it. I think it would be helpful and probably not feasible to summon the woman that had presented to us on evictions.
No, right, I just thought a discussion amongst the commissioners.
Yeah, okay.
But you could make a motion just to add it to the end of the agenda.
Okay,
Yes,
I
I'm
would-
now an expert on parliamentary procedure.
Okay, so yes, I would like to add a discussion of the eviction process to the end of, or evictions, to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
You need a second? Oh, sorry.
Do you want to be in charge now, then?
No. I was just saying that you need a second.
Yeah, I know. I went to that seminar without you.
Amen.
I'm just kidding.
Held it down.
Okay, a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Got it.
And just all those in favor?
Do we all need to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, updates from commissioners.
Just,
Oh, wait, the FAR comment.
Oh, sorry, yes, FAR comment, sorry.
The chair wouldn't have missed that.
Well, thank y'all and good evening. I appreciate y'all. So the comments that I just have are basically updating on our internship program. We finally did close the program and we were able to get 10 strong interns. We're really excited about the progress that and the recruiting job that Bonds has been able to do as the new internship coordinator, building trust quickly with community. So very impressed with that. We have been talking about, in the past few classes that we've had, the history of public housing in the United States. We're working on getting more detailed information on the specifics of public housing in Charlottesville. So working some connections there to get that for our interns. They also have been working on and learning about the annual plan. And so we had a really intense seminar session this past week where we actually went through with the interns page for page about the annual plan, and everyone was getting a good learning. So that's been a really great update. We also had them partner with a conversation this past week or a few weeks ago with MCSJ that we're working with in South Africa. And it was a really great conversation that we had about the U.S. and housing and what that means. And it actually stirred up a really great conversation afterwards with the interns talking about representation and just other things in community. So it is bringing up great things, I believe, to help us with advocacy and advancing community. Other thing is just continue to work and advance relationships and community partnerships to continue to make us strong. And that is a little bit of all I have. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll, okay, do you have a comment? Were we?
Good evening. My name is Annette Wilcox, and I wrote my phone number down in case of snowstorm cancellation through emergency.
Okay.
I have.
And hopefully there's not any more, the bug season is over, as long as we take care of our own privacy. And I just hope that this has been going on lately, and if am I clear? And
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any public comments on the Zoom?
Madam Commissioner Wilson, I ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Ms. Carey, can you send the link, or whomever, can we send a link to Brandon Collins and Tarana?
They should have the links.
Oh, okay. I just saw they emailed saying they didn't have it.
Yeah, Toronto's on right now under TC Nichols.
She's under me, us and her mom.
Oh, okay. And Brandon has it? Sorry.
Okay, any updates from commissioners?
Just a quick one that the city's annual budget process is about to begin, which will obviously include discussion of investments in CRHA and the Public Housing Association of Residents. And the first forum will be the City Manager Budget Forum, December 12th at 6 p.m. at Carver Rec Center. And there'll be a number of other meetings and work sessions from now through April. And if anyone's interested, you could just Google Charlottesville City Budget, and there'll be a web page that includes a calendar of all the scheduled work sessions and meetings. So just a heads up, budget season's about to begin.
I had a quick kudos to the Housing Authority, Mr. Sells and his staff. We had our annual turkey giveaway yesterday. 200 turkeys for the community, and Mr. Sells and his wonderful staff went and picked up all the turkeys. And if I'm not mistaken, we had 40 turkeys go to our residents. So thank you, Mr. Sells, for your service and your assistance in that regard. And much love to the whole team.
Thank you, Dr. Bellamy. Anybody else? Okay, we will move to approval of the board minutes from October 28th.
I move to approve the board minutes from October 28th, 2024.
Second?
Can you get a call?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
All right, that passes. Okay, next we will move to the housing director update.
Good evening, Ms. Tarana Banks will be handling this presentation. Ms. Banks.
Yes, good evening, board and everyone else in attendance. I don't know if there are any specific questions, but I can start with Ms. Emily's comments regarding evictions. So number one, we have, and I'm on site daily in most of the offices, but multiple times a week. We always encourage people to reach out to agencies to get help. Our asset collection manager has been spending time reaching out to agencies for the residents, and then contacted the residents. So we are trying to mitigate eviction. However, if you look at the numbers, the number of outstanding rents and the dollar amount, it is tremendous right now, currently. I know in the last week alone, we've had a lot of people get help. So these numbers that were given for the report will be lower now. We do still have some folks that will be going to court tomorrow. However, we have some people that we will be continuing so that they may have a chance to get assistance. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were, we're clear on that. We also tell everyone that comes in that, we can review the history if they are eligible for a payment plan. And we do have folks on a payment plan. We do let the court know that when we go. So I think that was everything. So yes, we do have multiple people on payment plan. We do have plans to continue some of the cases that were requested for them to get assistance. And then we do have some that will be moving forward. However, we have to try to collect the money. We have bills to pay, but we also are not just pushing money in dollar amount. Myself and the entire staff are assisting people daily to get assistance as well. So we are working on both sides. If there were any other specific questions regarding the report, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
I just have a quick question, and I'm sure that you've told us this before, so I apologize.
No.
But so for the cases that would that are moving forward at court, assuming the outcome from court is to move forward with the eviction, what is the timeline then for those?
Right. So I think what I hear you asking is if we get judgment in possession what's the additional time that the family would get prior to the writ being filed, is that right?
I guess, how long until they have to move out?
Right, okay. So, so that the next step after we get your judgment in possession, is we wait 3 days and then we can file a writ. So it really just depends on the sheriff's department. However, we use our best judgment. If we know a family is close to getting help or getting help, and there are no other violations or non-compliance issues pending, then we obviously will work with them to stay housed. So it's very much dependent on how backed up the sheriff's department is, and then kind of where we are with other issues in the unit. So it can be anywhere from, I would say, maybe 2 weeks out to 3 or 4 weeks. It's just going to depend on what the sheriff's office has going on, and the other factors.
Okay, thank you.
Is that timeline clearly communicated to people when this happens, or is it like sometime in the next month? Like, what are they going to be hearing tomorrow?
Tomorrow, if the judge gives them judgment in possession, yes, he explains it in court. He says the housing authority is getting judgment in possession. In 3 days, they can file a writ of possession, and then obviously, we also are available to talk to the families at court and explain to them better after the case is called if they need further explanation. However, we can't dictate what the sheriff's office is going to do, so we can't say it's going to be X amount of days, but we can give them an idea.
Okay, so I heard you say 3 days, so it could be as short as 3 days. Is that right?
Before we can file the writ, yes.
Okay.
That's not 3 days till the sheriff comes. 3
Okay.
days until we file the writ, and then depending on the calendar of the sheriff and how much they have going on, then they will put us on the schedule, and then they have to have time to serve the writ to the family. So all of these things add time, but unfortunately, I can't give you a set amount of time because it's dependent on their schedule.
I see
We have
Delphine.
Delphine's, I'm sorry.
I see Delphine Carnes has her hand raised.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I just wanted to add that this makes it sound as if the family hears about it for the first time and then they have 3 days to move out. That's not the case. If it's a situation where it's an eviction for failure to pay rent, they have first received a letter giving them 30 days notice. So this is not just a few days and you have to move out. There is notice and communications with CRHA staff long before the court date.
Yep.
Then looking at the packet, is the total amount of unpaid back rent, is that number a little over $80,000 or a little over $300,000?
It's currently maybe a little bit more than this because a new month is posted, but it's around 250.
Yeah, 232.
Yeah.
So,
It's a little higher now from the time we did this report, but yes.
okay, so $232,000 of unpaid back rent,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
which I'm assuming happens over a period of years at this point?
Yeah, most of the tenants that are going through the eviction are more than 4 or 5 months past due.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are there
And,
any additional questions on the housing director's update?
I just am wondering how much discretion we have about when we choose to bring things forward, to bring things to court. I'm just thinking about the timeline here right before Thanksgiving, and what that means for a family is like, I'm wondering how much discretion we have. Like when we think about evictions, this thing that I think staff is working really hard to avoid, but happens sometimes despite everyone's best efforts, how much discretion we have about thinking about the calendar and when we bring forward these evictions.
Well, unfortunately, this time, this is the day that court fell on because this is what the court had. In an ideal world, no, we wouldn't be going to court at this time. However, as mentioned previously, we haven't filed in months because we've been trying to give families time to pay. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. Like,
We've been splitting up the dockets. It's over, I think, 120 or 30 families that are past due and eligible for an eviction based upon their status and how many months they're past due. And so this is really taking off chunks of it and trying to focus on that. This is after multiple notices go out to the same tenants, knocking on doors, phone calls, and it's just failure to respond. Unfortunately, filing evictions is the only time a lot of the families respond. And that's normally when most of the money gets paid. Like, we had a family walk in for like $9,000 2 months ago after an eviction was filed. And unfortunately, that's the only way we could get some of them to engage with us to address this issue. We don't want to evict families. We want to keep families housed. But the families have to do their portion, which is pay the rent, because it's not fair to all the other families that are paying their rent. And so we can look at when filings happen, but it's based on months of working with families to get the rent addressed, like working with Pathways and the other organizations that have rent relief funds available.
Thank you, Mr. Sales. Any additional questions on the housing director update? Okay, HCV program manager update?
No, she's not.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols.
No, it can only be one. Good afternoon, good evening. So I'll be doing the HCV update. The program is running fairly smoothly. We did, as you all know, we have been in shortfall with the voucher program. We received our first check, well, our second check, which is the large $1 million check today. And so that's paid back CRHA for all the back rent that CRHA had paid out for the voucher program, which was a little bit over $600,000, $673,000. But the program will not be growing. We won't be pulling any families off the wait list because we're still projecting a shortfall for next year. That means they're anticipating our rents going up more than what HUD has obligated CRHA to receive. And so we should end this shortfall cycle in March. And at that time, we'll project out to see what the shortfall looks like for next year. But as of last week, we're projecting about a $300,000 shortfall for next year. And so that will cap the program at its current size. And our focus will be on keeping those families housed and assisted.
I'm a little confused. The shortfall cycle ends in March. What does that mean?
So our fiscal year ends at the end of March.
I see, okay.
And so we'll exit out of this year's shortfall funds at the end of March. It'll close us out.
Okay.
But we're projecting another shortfall for next year. And so we'll be continue to meet after March to see where we fall on that and if we actually need additional funding like we did this year.
Okay.
There are some programs that are not impacted by that shortfall, such as the mainstream, emergency housing, the fostering youth initiative. So those are special funded programs, and those programs will continue to lease up in VASH. The only program that's not fully leased up of those special right now is mainstream. And so we have 7 vouchers available in that program. So we're working with families to get leased up on that. And I don't think I have anything else. The wait list information, that number is going to stay the same. It's 1,700 families on HCV wait lists. Unfortunately, we won't be able to we don't anticipate pulling anything this upcoming year from the wait list.
And can you help me understand just, again, the cause of the shortfall? Is that HUD's fair market rents not matching what HUD will pay per voucher?
Well, it's multiple different things. So when I got here in 2020, at the end of 2020, the average rent we were paying to a landlord was $700 for a voucher. That average now is $1,100. So you take that difference, which is $400 times the 671 vouchers we have, times 12, and that's the impact of that increase. And so each year, our per unit cost, what CRHA pays per voucher, has increased each year drastically. And we're projecting for it to continue to increase drastically. And so that impact of that voucher going up for that one family causes a ripple impact of the entire fund. And so that is the reason for it. Our per unit cost has just skyrocketed. Everyone is seeing that same issue. This year, HUD had its largest amount of agencies run into shortfall because of that exact issue.
And is the cause of that what we have to pay is outpacing what HUD is setting as the fair market rent, or is the fair market rent not?
Oh, it's definitely outpacing. The fair market rent is not the fair market rent. HUD's fair market rent is not Charlottesville fair market rent. But the overall impact is we have folks in our program that are way below AMI levels. And so the lower they are AMI, the more we have to pay. And so as that continued increases, we can then serve less folks. So when we were serving folks at $700 and now we're serving folks at $1,100 a piece, we can serve less because of that. And so our program size hasn't decreased, and so you run into a shortfall. HUD doesn't want you to start kicking families off because you're in a shortfall, but you run into that position where you're paying more per voucher with the same amount of families or more being served, and then you run into where you have $1 million short.
Okay. I think I understand. The price per voucher is going up, but HUD still just sets a maximum amount they'll give each housing authority.
Correct. And it's not pacing at the same scale. So what they were projecting as our per unit cost was a little bit over $1,000, and we ended up a little bit over $1,100 a voucher. So even what their projections were showing based upon our fair market rents were off. What they can't take into account is when landlords change their rents and when folks' income will increase or decrease. And that's a big factor in portability.
Thank you.
Can I ask you just about that same point? I know that we've been acquiring some properties that we're intending to lease up with vouchers. Does that help the situation? I mean, I realize it helps us in terms of our revenues, but do we have more control over cost? Some of this is, I think, like it's, the cost of electricity. Like we can't control that, but I'm wondering, is that at all a pressure valve to try to relieve some of this pressure?
Well, we need to continue purchasing housing units because it's less and less that are made available on the open market. So not even landlords saying, hey, I don't accept vouchers, but landlords saying, hey, this is the criteria you have to meet in order to be eligible for my housing. Or, hey, this is the rent and it's so high, it's beyond the payment standard.
So is that legal with the Fair Housing Act that you can have criteria to rent a unit?
Yes. You can set your own criteria to rent a unit. So private landlords can say, hey, you have to have a minimum 700 credit score.
I see.
They can do that.
Okay.
They can't say, hey, you need to make 3 times the rent and you have to produce it yourself, not including the voucher.
I see.
That's
Okay.
where you
Okay,
will
so
have
they
an
can
issue.
they can say things
But they
like you
can
have a
set
minimum
their
credit.
own
Okay.
standards. Hey, I have a certain criminal history that you have to meet, I have a certain credit score you have to meet. They can do that.
Okay.
And they
They
could
do.
set a rent that's just so high, a voucher couldn't be paired with it, right?
Correct, and that's what happens a lot of times. They just bump the rent up high enough to where you can't put a voucher on it. That's all I had, I'm sorry.
Any additional questions or comments on the HCB program update? Okay. Finance update?
Can everybody hear me? My voice is still not great from last month. I've been recovering from flu, so there's no formal document. But But just kind of echo what Ms. Banks and Mr. Sell said. With, the receivables being so high, we need to be, at 2.5% to be a high-performing agency for HUD. So that's something we got to work on, and do that ethically. With HVC, luckily we did receive those funds today, so we can kind of get caught up on several things and try to manage that, to the best of our abilities, with rent in Charlottesville being what it is and HUD's, availability to only pay so much. But we've been having monthly meetings with those to try to, get as much as we can with that, and, going back years and, trying to refigure that based on inflation and other variables that are beyond our control. Other than that, have our audit upcoming here after Thanksgiving, so in the month of December, we'll be going through all of that and have our audit ready for you guys in January. Any questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you. All right, Mr. Sales, back to you.
Thank you. So I just want to touch on a few things. We're wrapping up closing for 212 and 217 Fifth Street. It should be closing at the end of the month. We anticipate having 2 vacant units upon transition. We've already begun preparing for lease up on the vacant units. We had our maintenance staff go take a look at one of the vacant units to prepare a scope of work for that unit. Looking at other opportunities to grow income from the site, not just focusing on the units themselves. So another business is located beside the building, and they are also in need of like maintenance space and lay down space for vehicles. And we happen to have 2 parking lots. And so we're looking at an opportunity to potentially rent them some space there as well. We closed on 407 Harris Road at the end of last month. 1 unit is vacant, but it is ready. And so we're working on leasing up that unit. Safety concerns. So we are having a lot of safety issues at a few of our sites. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that we're doing to address those safety issues. If you've driven through West Haven, you will notice that we've replaced the site lights, pole lights, and the porch lights at West Haven. They're much brighter now. We're slated to replace the porch lights at the scatter sites, which is AMP4, Mickey, Madison, and Riverside, when we're doing the doors, which we're doing now. So that project should be completed relatively soon. Permanent security at Crescent Halls has been secured, and they have started their services. We are currently exploring the effectiveness and cost of security services at the multifamily sites. We have not had great success with that in the past, and it has been a very big ticket item. And so we talked about what it would look like at South First Street, and for it to work there, it would need to be paired with another site to share the cost. And so we're going to be looking at that for the public housing sites when we're working on our budget this year. We have improved the communication with CPD to include summary of events when they're on site. So they've been on site recently a lot, and now they're providing us the written update on what's actually happening on the site, or what happened, or what they can provide us. Some of the things are still in investigation, so they can't provide us a lot of information, but they've provided enough for us to do our job on the property management side. We currently have some pending evictions due to shootings and other acts of violence, which we can't discuss further because they are pending cases. But a majority of our safety incidents involve a very few amount of units at each site. I think there's probably 4 or 5 that have been wreaking havoc at not only the site that they live at, but also a couple other sites that they frequent. I wanted to touch on the City Council West Haven resolution. We currently have proposal in front of council to form 2 entities for the redevelopment of West Haven. There was confusion that CRHA was developing a property management entity to manage West Haven, but that isn't the case. The entity is actually one entity is for the tax credits, and the second entity is for CRHA's ownership, which is the managing member. It's at 0.01%, which our role will be the property manager of the building, of the property, and handling day to day. Delphine is here to, she can delve into that a little bit deeper if you all have any more questions around that. She has been a part of setting up all the other entities. And this one did come to you guys maybe a few months ago. But Delphine, you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to say, I think it's a terminology confusion. The property management has nothing to do with the entities being created. It is called a managing member because it will serve as the managing member of the tax credit entity that is being created to handle the rehabilitation of the units and earn and generate the tax credits. And the 0.01% member, as John stated just a moment ago, is the managing member of that entity, and that is the entity through which CRHA has a controlling managing member interest in the tax credit structure. So this is absolutely the typical structure. It is not a change compared to what you've done in the past as an agency. I think it was just a misunderstanding in the way it was presented, and perhaps it confused legal aid, but this is absolutely the traditional standard LIHTC structure.
Perfect, thank you. We're also wrapping up closing for South First Street Phase 2. We anticipate closing towards the end of this year and starting that project at the beginning of the year. We're also currently finalizing 6th Street Phase 2. It's under HUD review before we can get to closing, but we anticipate that that project also beginning in the first quarter or late first quarter, early second quarter of 2025. 801 Harris Road. So we have a property that we previously talked about over a year and a half ago. 801 Harris Road, we acquired it with the Dogwood portfolio acquisition. When I came to you all about buying property on Meridian, we talked about 801 Harris Road being a industrial zone property located in the area where there's not a lot of other housing. The lot itself has its own challenges and the unit needs some work. And so we were looking at that as an option of one that we dispose of and acquired additional property to cover those 2 units, which was Meridian. We've bought that property. The first unit, it has been rented and is occupied. The second unit is slated to be completed at the end of December. And we have a family moving into that unit, which will free up 801 Harris Road for us to move forward with a disposition. We've received, can't go into it too much further because it is a property that's going to go in the open market, but we have received a study to let us know what the property is valued at. And so that will be what we use to guide that sale. It will come back to the board for final authorization before the property is sold, but that is an update on where we are today with 801 Harris. I just also want to say, please read through the monthly department updates. So a lot of big things happening in each department. I'll name a couple. New communication options are in the process for implementation, which will allow us to communicate through text with all our residents, through GovText. We have a new office space at Jefferson School for resident services. We have FSS coordinator, our Ross coordinator, and Jobs Plus will also be utilizing that space, which was the $2.5 million grant that we received a few months ago. HVAC deployment at Riverside has been completed or will be completed next week. And so that will be the first set of public housing units that are still fully public housing with HVAC in the city of Charlottesville. Mickey Drive has started its HVAC project, and I believe it's slated to be completed in January. And then the door project has started at Mickey, and they've completed their first row of units, and now they're on their second row. So there's a lot of big projects happening, a lot of big things happening at the agency to move the mission forward. And going forward, starting in next year, we're going to be revamping our agenda package to include the items in our strategic plan and our annual plan that actually tie in, and we can easily show what actions that we're doing each month that move us forward to completing our goals in our strategic plan. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Sales or comments?
So I have a question that's been on my mind, and I'm just wondering, as we're about to get a new administration, how much, I realize there's going to be losses, and I just don't know how much you're thinking about as we think about things like a strategic plan about how best we can protect our residents with, when, it's unclear what's going to happen, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be very good.
Yeah, so we've already started talking about that. The good thing about where we are, we've moved, since I got here, we moved a lot further away from being fully under HUD and needing federal funds to cover everything. So we've moved to other programs. We've added some additional non-subsidized housing units. And so we've diversified, and so we're not just dependent on federal funding. It will have an impact. So we started talking about what the impact will be in capital fund, what the impact will be in operating funds that we received. We don't know what that is yet, but we're prepared to adjust for it, applying for other funding options, making cuts, and then stretching out some of our projects so we can still get them completed. One thing that we've done so far is minimize how much is actually used in soft costs. So in the capital fund, a lot of money is allowed in soft costs. Well, whenever we get to where we are now, a couple of years from closing out a grant, and there's money left in soft costs, we pull it and move it onto a project, actual hard cost project. And so that's something that we've done in 2023. I think we did it in 2022. We're also using force account labor. So instead of the housing authority covering a salary for an employee out of his operating costs, like the folks that are doing the door project is 2 of CRHA's employees. So we're able to use capital funds to cover their salaries. And so we're looking at different ways to bring in additional income and diversify. And it's going to be a continuous thing.
Has there been any conversations with city council or even the people, people in the General Assembly to think a little bit about what could happen more locally?
No, not specifically. There's always conversations about how the city can assist us with funding. I have those conversations all the time, and they probably get tired of that. But there hasn't been specifically on what the impact of the new administration will be. But we've talked, I recently had a meeting with Sam to talk about some of the things, budget needs that we have. So we talked about translation services. We have 9 different spoken languages. And so we've made a large financial investment to make sure our residents can engage with us and we can properly engage with them. But HUD isn't covering those costs. We had to go find ways to cover that cost. They say you need to be able to engage with all your folks, but they don't say, hey, here's the money to make that happen because you have all these different languages on your sites. And so we have been having those conversations.
Yeah, and the city is assessing what potential impacts there could be, but there's just too many unknowns at this point to really assess, what it will be. I don't know if it affects CRHA, but one of the big things we'll be watching is if any unspent money from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act end up being cut, because that'll have a significant impact on what we could apply for in terms of various infrastructure and community projects, a lot of which pass through down to the state and then to us. So we know it'll be huge, but we just don't know exactly what it will be at this point. But
I know the General Assembly is trying to put some safeguards in place as well. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus was just talking about trying to protect housing specifically in lieu of the recent appointment, the cabinet member with the maybe I would say lack of experience working with HUD. So I guess we have to wait and see how they unveil their agenda as session opens up in about a month and a half from now. So we shall see.
I'm all good on my end. That's all I had.
before we move to public comments, was there anything else you wanted to touch on related to evictions?
Yeah,
or-
so I think this conversation has been helpful. I mean, one of the things I was wondering, I mean, first is if we could think a little bit again just about timing when it comes to evictions, and thinking also about like the number of units that we have like that are up for lease that have not yet been turned, and thinking about staff capacity, because I think seeing a lot of vacant units and then also seeing a big eviction docket, like, you know, we want to be as leased up as possible, and so thinking about balancing some of that. The other thing is I was just wondering, we heard the, you know, eviction diversion presentation from Kathleen, which was really helpful. Would it be possible, and I know we can't get it, but I think when I see this docket, it looks, I mean, it's a lot of numbers, and I see it's a lot of money too, but it would be helpful if we could get, as part of our reporting, a sense of like if there's a checkbox of like we've gone through every step with all of these people, so that we know that there aren't people falling through the cracks. And so I don't know what this would look like in terms of like preserving privacy, but if there could be some transparency for the board when we think about the steps to divert from evictions, that we could see that and we could see like, okay, this is how this is moving forward. I don't know if other people have thoughts about this.
I don't think we could track it by name, but we could easily get like number of families going through eviction diversion, number of families referred to housing, rent relief, or number of families referred to for budgeting financial literacy classes. We can do that.
I guess, so I think that's helpful. I'm sorry, I'm interjecting, but I think what I think you're looking for is to just make sure that at the point that we get to eviction, we've checked all 30 of the like we've done every possible thing before we go to court, I think is where we're trying to get to. And so that might get us there, but it might just be like, we've got 30 people we're taking to court, and these are all the things we've done for each one before we got to this point. And they, you know, obviously we need to preserve privacy, I agree, but just making sure we're not missing a step for any of those folks before we get to that point, I think is what you're looking for.
Okay. So what?
I mean, you could just give them a random person, family A, family B, like, you know.
Okay. All right, yeah, we can
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's where we're trying to get.
We want to be able to see how we've exhausted all of our options in regards to.
We need some tea.
It's been a long weekend. How we've exhausted all of our options in terms of preserving families, their vouchers, and staying right. Yeah.
Can I ask just one? I know that there's often a lot of like public subsidies that go unclaimed by individuals, and so it would be helpful to, if maybe in an update, to see how people are, because I've heard, you know, I've heard sort of anecdotally people will say, oh, I just found out that I'm eligible for this money that I had not been receiving. And so thinking too about ways that we're educating families about like all of the public subsidies that might be available for them, so that people are really availing themselves. And I think this goes for all of our residents, making sure, especially in a moment where things I think are going to get, like the scarcity model is about to be on some steroids, to make sure that any available public funds are being tapped if we can find them.
I will say that one's going to be a little bit harder because each person may be different. And I was having a conversation today with Megan from the city, Megan Gordon, and she was talking about how some of the families may be eligible for certain different programs depending on who they are, what they've been through, or what their circumstances are now. And so that one will be a little bit harder just because someone may be eligible for the VIEW program but not be eligible for something else.
Yeah.
And without us being in social services where those programs originate and are being ran, we wouldn't know that, but we are looking, working to put some things in place to where we're communicating through the eviction process. So then if it's someone that they also serve, that they can get involved. And even if it's not getting involved to keep them housed at CRHA, is getting them involved so they can find, what's the next step? If the eviction is going to go through, what are the next steps for the family?
Yeah, I'm wondering too, just maybe if this could be a city tie-in, as I sit next to Michael, if there's a way to just get this on the city's radar, to think if we could even have more of a through line between CRHA and social services office, to try to make sure that people know all of the monies that they are claiming, because people with deep pockets are claiming all the money that that is available to them, and I think that this is a time to really try to drain whatever is available for people who really need it.
I know the Department of Social Services in the city does have a street sheet, which is kind of a one-pager with numbers and contact information for all the different services available, both for emergency financial release, but also if someone wanted to start the process of applying for SNAP, other benefits, as well as just general community services available, like food banks, soup kitchens. So that is a resource that Department of Social Services has. Obviously, particularly with unpaid back rent, there's just going to be a limit to the amount of services available, because Pathways has a maximum set amount of money that a family could access, just because the amount of funding in it versus the need is so great. There's only so much, for a lot of families, it could probably cover 1, maybe 2 months of back rent, but, certainly not, 6 months plus.
And we receive several checks monthly from Pathways, so weekly, really. They give me a call weekly.
And we know that in terms of the community at large accessing Pathways, it is being fully accessed. There's not unspent money, left.
I would just say, obviously, Mr. Sales and staff can speak for themselves, but just in some recent experiences I've had with some folks who I know, I really believe our housing authority goes like triple above and beyond to ensure that persons aren't evicted. They make a lot of effort. I think in some instances there may be deeper issues with individuals as to what maybe gets them to that point, but I've seen firsthand them go very, 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 very far to help persons from getting on this list. But yeah, I think the reporting will help, just so we can see, but they put in a lot of effort.
There is a point at which, right, you don't want anyone to be unhoused, but there's also, you can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped.
There's a level of accountability, I think, that shared accountability that we take onus of, and the residents have to take onus of as well.
There's a wait list of over, 2,000 individuals as well, but.
Yeah, which I think is also, I don't know if it's the conversation for tonight. I can't even talk to have the conversation, but I think we do have to figure out how we weigh and balance the extreme amount of supports in which we give to persons who are currently housed, balancing that with the massive amount of people who desperately want to be housed. I just know we make a lot of amends for people, and there are a lot of people who want to be housed, and I wonder, again, I don't know if it's a conversation like right now, but there's people on that waiting list who are happy to come in and take some of those units, and I think we have to find a balance. I don't, just for the sake of this conversation, I don't always think that we're showing that balance, because we show a lot of deference to those who are currently with us, and that may be to the detriment of some of the people who are also desperately waiting on the wait list. But it's complicated, to say the least.
But I was mentioned earlier, I would agree, an interesting data point to track would be the amount of people who successfully, enter diversion programs, just to get a sense of how effective it's been or not been, and I don't know what it would look like or how to do it, but obviously it's just as many assurance that, all the outreach that we want to do has occurred. As others have said, if it reaches a point where, and I think in a public housing unit, the minimum monthly rent is $20 a month. Let me know if I'm wrong.
25.
25, and then with the housing choice voucher, if your income changed
It's 35.
Okay, 35.
25 in the voucher program.
25 in the voucher program. If there's, if there's an income issue, and then, if you spent 6 months or over a year reaching out to people through multiple means, and there's no engagement to enter a payment plan or report what income changes there might have been, if income is the issue, I don't know what else you do unless you make the decision that this is an agency which isn't going to evict anyone, which is obviously, a challenge. I don't know what deeper issues might be going on if someone has not paid rent for over a year and is not engaging after repeated attempts to contact them and get on a payment plan and work through any financial issues.
Or 6 months.
But 6 months.
Yeah, or you make a plan and then you pay 1 month and then don't pay anymore. Like,
I think Ms. Banks might have a comment. She's being TC Nichols.
I wanted to add to 2 things. The first thing is that, just for clarity, maybe a quarter, if not more, of our families actually they're disqualified with a lot of the agencies because they have maxed out multiple agencies over the course of the year. And so when you're looking at a family who has maxed out assistance with multiple agencies, and you like Mr. Bellamy said, you have to start looking at the other reasons why these families, and we will be presenting more on the eviction diversion program very soon in the future. But I just wanted to mention that when we refer families, we don't make the decision of whether they'll qualify or won't qualify with any of the agencies. We just say, here are all the agencies that you can reach out to, and we go through the steps. We go as far as if we know someone can't read or write, we will send the email for them. We will make the contact for them. If we know they're not good at using the phone, we will do all these things for them, and we do all these things for them. So I just wanted to make that clear as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to eviction, it is something I really appreciate the efforts that staff have made. I do think it's true we have a very long waiting list. The reason for that waiting list is because of the housing crisis in Charlottesville, not because of people who are currently housed. And I think that's important to hold, to say that we shouldn't be pitting people who are having trouble paying rent against those who need to get off the waiting list, since they're not enemies to each other. The enemy is the lack of affordable housing in Charlottesville. And so I think when we talk about eviction, I'd like to keep that at the forefront of this conversation.
And I'm going to offer, one other thing. I think at maybe a future meeting we should talk about the eviction process, because I think that there's probably some confusion on that process, because it takes months before we ever typically get in front of a judge. And so it's a lot going on during that time frame. So maybe at a future meeting, we can talk about the actual eviction process that we use, and then the steps, and then maybe from there, we can drill down into the data points that the board is interested in us presenting going forward on a monthly basis.
And
I got a ton of things to say about this, but I'm not going to take up our time. Maybe we could do this at a work session or an later meeting. But not to say that we could pull everything down to a number, but I mean, we could get close and develop a real metric system on what that looks like.
Cool.
And what reasonable expectations are.
Yeah, that would be great.
If we work on that outside, but, to really get on that, you see a number of AR, like, $250,000, and, there's reasons beyond that other than, people not getting the adequate help and, making an effort, so.
I would actually propose, I think there's enough thoughts and, concerns, especially with the changes in the administration and challenges we think that we're gonna have, that maybe we just dedicate a whole future working session just to talk about evictions.
I would be fine with that.
Yeah.
Well, one final question. I know you've touched on it before, but if you are able to, family works with CRHA and the issue is an inability to pay rent monetarily, what's the minimum monthly payment in terms of payment plans, if they engage with CRHA?
So
Oh, go ahead.
we don't have a set minimum. We look at what the family can afford based on looking at the family's financial position. So I've seen it as low as like $50. I've seen it $100. The person who had 9,000, they said they wanted to make $1,000 payments every month because they knew they had it. But we really focus on what the family can afford to pay.
But
Is zero an option?
No.
John, Mr. Sales, I'm sorry, can I just add that for the public housing units, we do have HUD guidelines that we follow when it comes to payment plans as well. So we can't go over a percentage of their income. That's how we base our payment plans. Now, if it's a family that's non-public or non-HUD, then that's something different. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
But it is based on the family's income and not just regardless of their income, you have to pay X dollars each month.
That's right. But it can't be zero.
Right,
Zero can't be the payment.
right.
That's helpful context. Any additional, we could probably talk about this all night. But I think that we've got a few follow-ups, and I think probably won't be ready for the next working session, but beginning of January, maybe we can.
Yeah, we're gonna shoot for January to do evictions.
Okay, thanks, everyone. I will open it up again for public comments.
I love some of the topics that you've talked about tonight, especially the idea of accountability to make sure that services are provided equitably. And I keep coming back to this conversation in a meeting this morning with the Department of Human Services and CRHA, and Ms. Giles and I were on the call too, and they were talking about addiction and how rampant addiction is in public housing and how we are not doing much at all to help people get treated, to help bring, awareness and anything to really combat that epidemic. And I would not be surprised if addiction is part of the issue for some of the folks that are on the eviction list. Nonetheless, it's 3 days before Thanksgiving. They're gonna be in court, even if it gets continued, they're gonna be in court during the holiday season. I would really encourage CRHA to request continuances for everyone so that people are not getting put out right before Christmas. There was a woman this morning who's expecting a child and lives in private housing, and she had gotten all of the money that she owed. She had December money gathered from assistance, and the landlord refused to take that money. So she was evicted this morning, and she's gonna have a baby, and where is she gonna go? Who knows? Like, this town does not have enough services for people who need housing, and I appreciate what was pointed out about the lack of affordable housing, because it is dire. The other thing I just wanted to point out is how many vacant units you have now that are not ready for occupancy. So if you're going to evict a dozen more people and those turns are going slowly, you're just going to have vacant units sitting there. So there's nothing to lose for the housing authority by just delaying and letting people get through the holidays. And the last small thing on payment plans, I think one of the things that is in the policy or the law, I'm not sure what, is reasonableness of the payment plans, and we do appreciate that CRHA has been helpful in trying to make payment plans work for people that are realistic, because if they can't uphold their end of the payment plan, then they're back on the eviction docket. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dreyfus. Any additional comments? Okay, if there's nothing else, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
Yes. Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Why you come? Why you tell me?
No, this was the opposite. This was Adrian Linker. It was actually like really, like the music was like this beautiful, like I would love a live show. I had not been to the, in DC. No,